Good morning. My name is Johnson. I'm third year pharmacy students at UKM. I would like to direct a few questions to you, whereby you mentioned that at the starting of the presentation, you start off your career in the sales industry. Thus, I want to know how does your involvement in sales industry help you to shape you in your future career? And those any advices for students who are going to involve in sales and marketing industry? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean the sales, and I discovered this skill when I worked as a student. So I think the first thing to advise is if you're a student, try to find opportunities to get experience, either in internships or you work during your vacation. So what I did in my vacations always is I worked in sales. Basically, I worked in exhibitions selling ice cream, mostly. Also coffee machines and wallpaper, but mostly ice cream. And the reason for that was very simple. Is first of all, I had a chance by coincidence to get that job. Second, it was like 10 days, very intense work from 7 to 9 in the evening. But basically in 10 days, I earned the same as you would normally earn in 1 month. And then I was able to travel the rest of the time. The reason I started in sales is because, first of all, sales is a very good development area because it's actually a tough job. You have to deal with many different people. You have to adjust to different people. You have to be able to talk. You have to overcome your own their own courage to talk to them. So it sort of forms you. And in many companies, also I would say in the pharmaceutical companies, also often the case, sales is sort of an entry point. Because it teaches you a lot in terms of interaction, in terms of also planning, and in terms of making good decisions on who you're selling to and how you're selling. So I think for me that was the original point. It was not necessarily a really totally conscious decision to start in sales. I mean, I started in sales also because I got a job in sales, but it is probably easier to get a job in sales first than in marketing or in any other area. But I mean, talking about pharmaceutical, we also have roles in medical. We have medical advisors, we have medical liaison officers who are basically going out and really talking about all the clinical trials, explaining the data of the clinical trials. So I think any job that forces you to go out and speak to people is a good training.
Thank you. And another question I would like to direct to the Novartis group as a whole, and in terms of getting listed in stock exchange so that you can actually gather more money and increase your expansion in Asia countries. Thank you.
But first of all, I would not be involved in the decision making of the stock exchange, so that is a few levels higher. If you ask me if I think they will do it, I doubt it. Because we are listed in Switzerland. Switzerland is the headquarters, and we are listed in the US. And in order to have a foot in Asia, it's not necessarily needed to be listed. What is much more needed is to really have a strong engagement, like in clinical trials, in science work, etc. So that is probably the likelihood of getting listed in Asia. I would rate it low. But again, I'm not the decision maker, and there might be lots of things ongoing Basel headquarters that I'm not aware of. Thank you. You're welcome. So, next question.
Good evening to everyone. Okay, I'm Nadiana, Nadiana from the Faculty of Pharmacy 4th year. Okay, actually, I just want to ask related to the healthcare outcome, healthcare objective from the previous slide, that you say that the healthcare aims is to give the patients the better outcome after use the medicines or the pharmaceutical drugs. So I just want to ask, based on the company, what will the company done to manage the adverse effect or the side effect that patients have after the product being distributed to the customer?
Yeah, I mean, there's various things that we do. First of all, part of the data collection of the clinical trials, because the aim is to have as little as possible adverse events. So during any clinical trial, all the possible events that happen get registered. So when you read the prescribing information, you usually have a very, very long list, scary list usually, of things that could happen. And the reason this list is so long is because any event that happens to any patient in any trial has to be listed and has to be publicized. So let's say you are a patient in a clinical trial and you happen to have a headache. The headache can come because it's rainy weather or because you were sitting in the air condition. But the fact that you have headache will be noted down and will appear as a side effect in the prescribing information. And if it happens very often, then it will be listed as a frequent side effect. Now, once the drug is approved based on the risk and safety profile, then of course side effects can still happen, because it is basically impossible to have something that works in the body only one way. There is always some other effects. Now, what you need to do is to try and limit those effects by making a very strong target selection and to also follow them. Meaning that we have what we call pharmacovigilance. So if any patient has any side effect, they can call us. We have an obligation to report it to our quality department within 24 hours and to the health authorities. And then this gets tracked. So Novartis centrally in headquarters has a tracking system. Let's say if patients in a new product that comes out now call and have headache, and then patients in Germany and US and elsewhere call as well. On a daily basis, the side effects are being followed, and if there's an accumulation of more side effects, then there's an immediate investigation of is the side effect linked to the product, and then things like a recall, of course, something that we don't want, can happen. Or a restriction of use, meaning that patients who are exposed to sun, for example, shouldn't take the drug, things like that. So that is followed very strictly in the beginning, before it gets approved, and afterwards as well. But you cannot avoid. It's basically a balanced decision between the efficacy that you need and the side effects. And for some severe diseases, you consciously take the decision that you say, okay, this product has side effects, like some of the cancer treatments. We know it, but it's still better to treat the patient and save their life rather than avoiding the sickness and all the things they go through. So it's a balanced decision, basically.
So my name is Azima.
I think I'm getting a fan club here.
Okay, I'm Azima from third year. So basically just now I saw a slide where there was a graph showing some company that have hit a wall after their patent period has ended. So what do you think they should do? Because after the generic drugs have come in, there will be like lots of drugs, the same drug, almost the same efficacy, that have like much lower price than the original drug. So what do you think the original company should do? Because do they have to like gone down? Bring down the price a bit, or open or make a new rebranding? Because like it will be a bit weird for that company to lower the price, because some of them they're trying to keep the price to sort of maintain and get back all the investment that they've done. So what should they do?
I mean, I'm not in the when generics come, and you said it yourself, they are sort of the same efficacy. If they're sort of the same efficacy, I would be very careful. So I think one thing, and that's also the task that the regulators do, is you have to make sure that the quality is there. Because cheap is not enough. I mean, it's a patient's life. And unfortunately, there are companies who are bringing cheap but not so good quality. So the regulators work very hard to avoid that. But the price should not be the first determining factor. Now then, the second thing is that it depends really on the market. If you take the US, for example, if a product that loses patent goes off patent, basically on the next day, the sales really drop to zero. So the generic company comes in and the originator loses all the sales. So what you have to do as a company then is you have to, first of all, you know roughly when you lose your patent, so you can prepare. You can see that you put your investment somewhere else. But there is also many countries, and Malaysia is one of them, and many patients who do not switch to generics. They stay with the originator product. And yes, sometimes the price comes down, but there is only a limited amount that the price can come down on an originator, because you have to sustain your innovation. And the drug that you take today is funding the innovation of tomorrow. So you have a more costly process and a more costly structure. So the price will never come down to the price of a generic, or very unlikely. But for example, we have Sandoz as a division, and they have generics of many products, not necessarily only our products, but also of other companies. So that's the way that Novartis does it. We have one arm that focuses on innovation, and the other arm that focuses on cost effectiveness, which is Sandoz. But the one thing I would like to say again is that if you take generics, and governments have to use generics, we know that. That's why we have the two divisions. You just have to make sure that it's high quality. And the one thing I always say, and it sounds a bit sloppy, is that there is no copy without an original. So to only go after generic is a dead end. If all governments and all patients start to only take generics, then there will be no innovation. Because you have to fund the innovation as well.
Experience Guardian. I want to ask, previously you said that your experience in teaching has become an advantage to you because your boss think that you can venture into new field. So I want to know, is there any special tips that you have on how to adapt to new environment? And as I can see, you excel in the environment, the new environment. So is there anything that you can share with us? And secondly, I want to know if there are any special tips also, and how you balance your life with your work. Because from how comfortable you're telling about your kids, I can see that you're having a nice family. So I want to know if there.
I'm not sure if they agree.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay. One way that I try to do is first of all understand, meaning learning about the culture that you're going to, knowing as much as possible, technically I mean, knowing on how you behave or how you speak or how you dress in a certain culture is one thing, but that's the more technical knowledge. And then to adopt this is observe, look around, try to speak to people, also be flexible. And also do it as often as you can. Go somewhere else. Go somewhere where you're not comfortable. If you always stay in the same village, you will never get to know the city. Once you go to the city and you feel really lost, and you learn how to behave or how to get out of it, of the feeling of feeling lost, and you get comfortable with the feeling of feeling lost, you can practice it. I mean, when I came to South America, I think I told the story, right, last time. So for those who haven't heard it, or for those who don't remember, is when I came to South America, I mean, it was first the whole setup of going there and taking the job was very exciting, and it was a great opportunity. By the way, I discussed it also with my professor because I was actually starting a doctor's degree in business. And then I asked him, should I continue or should I go? And he basically said go, but he didn't say it that way. He said basically if you don't want to have a scientific career in business, and you might not want that because you're more practical, then it's better to go because it's a new experience. So when I came there, first it was all excitement and planning and getting ready. But sometimes only once you're there, it really dawns on you what you've done. So only when I was there, I realized that, well, it was really a big step. I have maybe underestimated what it means, but I was there already. So what should I do? I mean, going back was not an option that I considered because I felt, I would feel embarrassed, and also I wanted to try, but I didn't feel very comfortable in the first few weeks. And then I set myself a target, which was if after 6 months I'm still not happy, I can still decide to go back. So I set basically a KPI, if you want, or a target, a smaller target. And then I said to myself, actually 1 year is not so long, I can survive no matter what, and I've just put myself on survival mode. So, meaning that you don't expect too much and you just try and take everything in and learn. And then after 3 months, things get easier. And when you've gone through that experience the first time, you remember it the second time. Then you just set yourself a target of 3 to 6 months and see how it goes. And then things become better anyways, and then you learn and you adopt. But I mean, there's other people who are less good in adopting, or they don't like it. I mean, my sister and my brother are in Austria, and they've always lived in Austria, and they will probably never live anywhere else, because they're different. So you also have to accept if that's not your cup of tea, then you don't do it. But if you want to have an international career, you can't avoid it, you have to do it. So that was the first question. Now the second one, work-life balance. That's one of the most asked questions, and there's really no answer to the question. I think there is no answer that fits everybody. I mean, the best thing for work-life balance, in my view, is that you like your work, and you like your life and your family, and your work is part of your life. For me, there is no one side and the other side, like the evil work and the good life. I enjoy what I'm doing. I really love my work. So for me, it's not a different thing than life. It is part of my life. Of course, my family would like to see me more often. Of course, I would like to see them more often. I mean, of course, I would like to see my kids go to sleep, and often they are already asleep when I come home. And of course, they complain that I'm working too much. But what I do is then on the weekend, I try to really be there for them. I don't check my email. There's lots of people who have their iPhone all the time, and then they look, and even the kids are there. They look their emails, they look the SMS, etc. I don't do that. So if somebody wants to reach me on a weekend, they have to call me. I'm not checking my email that somebody says, oh, you have to do this. I will not find out over the weekend. I'll find out on Monday. Unless there is a special event, like a big review or big visit or something. But as general, I try to keep the weekends for the family. And then on Friday evenings, they usually pick me up from the office, and then we go for dinner. And that has two effects. One, they pick me up so I can't stay in the office too long. And second, we have a family dinner. So try to make fixed points that are really exclusive to the family. And then it's probably more valuable time than spending an entire week watching TV or doing something else, rather than really focusing on I cook with them, or my daughter usually comes on a Saturday morning and says, Mommy, can we bake something? We bake something. Or do some sports together, do things together. I mean, it's not many hours, but at least I try to do quality hours.
Question, would you like me to...
Can you leave them one by one so I can remember?
Yes, I'm asking you for that actually. Okay, the first one is actually related to just now Azima's question. After the patent has ended, so so now we will have an original drug and a generic drug. Of course, okay, some patients will prefer generic drug, but to your point of view, what will you explain to the patient that what's significant or important about original drug compared to taking generic drug?
The most important thing in my view is that the generics, they are very strict to ensure that the quality is there. But if the quality is there, the patent has expired, the patient has a lot of reasons to take the generic. Because otherwise they won't be able to afford. And it's better to have something that you can afford than going to an originator if you can't afford it. And I mean, good quality generics would have the same efficacy and safety.
Thank you so much for answering the first question. Okay, next question is about the company. Why Alcon? Why eye care? Is eye care really that significantly having a good prospect than other fields in health? Thank you.
No, that is actually a historic reason. I mean, basically Novartis purchased Alcon. Alcon was a standalone company that focused on eye care, a US-based company who focused on surgical eye care, on contact lenses, actually not at the time, surgical eye care and pharmaceutical eye care, meaning eye drops, anti-infectives, glaucoma, etc. And this company was purchased by Novartis a few years back. And then Siva Vision was actually a Novartis company, so the vision care products, the contact lenses, was put into that company because it made sense that if they are an eye care specialist, and that's how the company was built, as eye care specialist company. If they are an eye care specialist company, then all the eye care should be in one, that's why. I mean, in the meanwhile, things are changing, and we are actually now in the process, and I'm not telling you any secrets because it's been publicly announced. We are actually in the pharmaceutical division, we also have eye care prescription drugs. And now what is happening is that we will take all the pharmaceutical products from Alcon into Novartis. So all the eye drops, all the glaucoma products will be together under Novartis, and then Alcon will focus on the surgical business, which is really very, very different. I mean, surgical procedures, surgical tools are very different than pharmaceuticals. Also, the doctors are different, and they will do also the vision care, which is contact lenses. It's also totally different customers, because then you talk about customers and not patients. Because if you take contact lenses, it's not necessarily a patient who takes them, but they're also contact lenses for healthy people, like the colored ones. So it's a very different way of talking to customers or talking to the patients, so that's why it's separate. It's a different expertise.
Thank you so much. That you'll want the employee to have
Hard work.
Thank you.
Two things: hard work and good attitude. The career will come by itself.
Thank you, and I absolutely agree.
So as you may or may not be aware, in Malaysia we are faced with this situation where we have a lot of medical graduates who eventually may not find jobs as doctors. So I wonder if we could have an idea of what are the job opportunities for medical graduates in the pharmaceutical industry. Thanks.
Actually, I'm always trying to look. The next talk is with HR. No. Again, as I mentioned earlier on, there's many different pathways, and I might not be able to show them all. But I mean, a very clear entry point are various areas. One is what we call the medical scientific liaison, which is basically a person who has to know a certain disease area very well, needs to know all the studies inside out, and goes and sees doctors to explain the studies. And also, if a rep has if a salesperson has a scientific questions, they would answer it. Or they would do a literature search, or they do presentations to doctors about the literature. So that's one entry point. Then we have medical advisors. They're a bit more senior than the MSLs. The medical advisors basically do a similar job, but it's more office-based. They prepare presentations, they give scientific answers, they check if the marketing material is scientifically correct. They also give talks. They teach me on what I need to know about the disease area, and not only me, I mean me and others. So that's typically. Then we have a clinical research officer, so they really run the clinical trial. So when a global clinical trial comes here, they make sure that the data collection in the hospital works. They explain the protocol to the physicians who participate. So that's also a good entry point. We have a quality department. They do the quality control. They do all the SOPs. It's very paper-based, so it's not so medical-based, but more paper-based. But it's good to have a scientific degree, and most importantly, to be very detailed. The regulatory department is also one. And then we have people who then from one, you can also start in sales. I mean, it's actually a good start of a career for a medical doctor to work in sales. And then develop into marketing. But we have also people who started in medical and then moved into marketing. Yesterday I had lunch with a GM of another company, and he started as a doctor. He was a practicing physician and then moved into the pharmaceutical industry. So, and now he's chair. So all pathways are open.
Thank you for a brilliant talk, Michaela. Operation at the moment, particularly in Malaysia. Thank you.
You mean how many we have? Yeah, no, we don't have enough. Actually, we have sometimes partly it's our fault because we always want experienced people, and it's harder to find somebody who has been a practicing doctor to say goodbye to the patients and take an office job. I mean, for all the departments that I mentioned earlier, we do recruit. We usually recruit a balance between experienced people and young new graduates, because the new graduates need more assistance from other colleagues. So we cannot only have new graduates, but we do. I mean, we have a program called Be Smart, where students of different companies, different universities, come and spend a week with us and really get to know more about the company. We interview them. We look at their CV of all the other things that they have done. And we have just hired 2 of them, so they're completely fresh graduates. So I mean, it's not massive, but it's always a balance. Yeah. So when our HR comes in, we can maybe make a small interview session as well.
Can I follow with a question?
I thought you wanted to apply for it.
Yeah, since Dean Saliha asked a question, I think I must. Now, in the engineering faculty, it's also a very interesting phenomenon with some of the engineering programs because of the drop in oil prices. So there is a threat to the oil and gas industry. What do you perceive as the largest threat to the pharma industry, apart from competitors from the generic? What will be the single largest, or perhaps a few of the concerns of the pharma industry? What would be the largest threat? Would it be, for example, from alternative practice? Because there is this element of over-prescribing. There's a lot of people, a lot of doctors nowadays who say the best cure is drink water. You know, I would like to hear your views on this.
I mean, I would agree to the drink water if it helps. and I'm saying that because there is a huge placebo effect in many things. And you see that in clinical trials. I mean, in some clinical trials, the placebo effect is 50%. So 50% are not on drug and they feel better. So if there's anything you can do that makes you feel better, do it. The medication is there for things that you won't do better without. So some of the overprescribing is partly because patients don't take their medication when they get it. So they have tons of things at home, and I include my parents. When I go home, I usually go through their little box and sort it out. Because they get things and then they don't take them, then of course if you don't take them, then they don't help, and then the doctor prescribes something new. We had a case study presented by a doctor a week ago on heart failure patients, and he showed the list of medications that this patient had 15 different things. Different hypertension products, different cholesterol lowering drugs. All of this doesn't make sense, or some of it didn't make sense, because they're just the same. And he changed the patient to 4. So it is a mix between the patient and also the doctor interaction in a sense on how much the patient takes. So I don't think the overprescribing for us would be the biggest threat. I mean, there is a few elements that influence. I mean, of course, if governments decide to reduce their spend in healthcare, that's a big impact. If they cut funds, we can see it. But most importantly, actually, the patients feel it. Because there are patients, you have to be aware of that don't get the drug anymore, even so they need it. And for us, a big threat is also when a drug fails, meaning that you've done the best you can to test safety and efficacy, and then when it gets into the broad population, you suddenly see a side effect that was not seen in all the thousands of patients that you've done. That's the biggest negative impact, because in the population, it always leaves the negative taste that you haven't done the best you could to test it, which is not what you would want to, not what you would do. And it always has, it doesn't matter which company, when any drug fails and you see in the news a competitor has a failed drug, I'm not happy about it, because it has an impact on the entire industry. I mean, of course I could say, haha, competitor lost. That's not the right thing, because it impacts all of us. Because it sort of puts a shadow on what we're doing and what we're trying to do. So I think failed drugs, side effects are probably the biggest issue. And then any things that have to do with failure on compliance. I mean, when people do the wrong things and for the wrong reason and it ends up in the newspaper, that's a big impact.
Now, the first phase is the production of the lead compound, right? So I was wondering, do the pharmaceutical industry company produce new research on new lead compound after the first one has finished, after they have gotten the patent, or are there a few concurrent research being done at the same time? Thank you.
There is actually a lot of research done at the same time. I mean, you look at millions of compounds in screenings before you find one. And so there's many scientists looking at identifying lead compounds based on research, on science, on what could be a potential molecule or what could be a potential protein. But there are millions screened in parallel. I mean, if you go into the labs and you see the machines, there are literally machines that have pellets with hundreds of tubes and they go in and they get tested and they get excluded, and then another shift of hundreds. So it's done in parallel, and it's also done in parallel for different diseases. So if there is a medical logic of a certain compound to work in one disease, could it also work in another? That's also done. I mean, we have products that have been developed for transplantation, for immunology. They also work in cancer. They also work in MS, in multiple sclerosis. So it's a parallel process, and in the different disease areas, it works at the same time.
In 2014, it states that 5% of medicine in Malaysia are counterfeit drugs. So, talking about the threat in the pharma industry, how the counterfeit drugs in Malaysia can impact in the pharma industry. Does it lead? Is this a rising trend that we should be aware of? And does the pharma industry have a role in this issue to overcome this? Thank you.
Yeah, your question has much, but it won't help. It's a big problem actually, and you still have spent money, even though you've spent less maybe. The one risk in Malaysia compared to other countries is relatively low in counterfeit, and one of the reasons is because the government also tries to avoid it. So the government has a unit that really goes and checks and tries to find counterfeits, to identify them. And the originator products also have to put a symbol on the, I can't remember the name right at the moment. The hologram, yes, thank you. So there's a little shiny silverish thing. The hologram is actually intended to make sure that you avoid counterfeit. Of course, I mean, can a hologram be copied? Maybe. There's no 100% guarantee. One thing I do, and I'm not here to tell you what to do, but one thing I do is when a pharmacist gives me the drugs outside the package, I don't take it. I want the full package, even though it costs more and maybe there is some waste, but I never take just the blister. First, I want the prescribing information, because the pharmacist wouldn't know what all other things I'm taking, and usually they don't ask. And I want to read it myself, and I also want to remember how to take it, and I want to know the expiry date, etc., etc. So I never take a blister. I always take the package, and then on the package I can check. And the other advantage of it, if there is any concern, let's say I get a side effect or I have any problem, on the package there's a batch number. I can call the company, I can make a report, and then the company can track the batch back to the production back. So basically every product has a batch number, and if you come and have a complaint, we are able to go back to the batch number, to the production site. We would know when it was produced, where it was produced, and we can go back. They have a sample in the factory to test it back. So that's why, I mean, taking a bit of care on what you buy, and maybe not always look for the cheapest, is also because, I mean, counterfeits